Yay!
Yay!
Okay. Thank you guys. How fun.
That was great.
That was fun.
Not as scholarly, I think, as we assumed from the start.
I'm relieved. I'm relieved.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair, a global Witcher podcast. My name is Alyssa from Good Morn, and I'll be your host as you, I, and our international Hansa accompany Geralt of Rivia and his destiny, Cirilla of Sintra, across the continent. Here we are at the penultimate episode of the season. I'm so excited to close out Baptism of Fire with everybody between this episode and the next. As a quick announcement, one of the guests who you'll hear today is Kitty. On the next episode, we have Softy. Between the two of them, they host a wonderful book club within the Hansa. And on Sunday, May 4th, 2025, they'll be hosting a discussion about The Bounds of Reason, discussing the book, the Netflix adaptation, as well as the podcast episodes about it as well. If you guys love their discussions here on the podcast, this episode and next, be sure to check out the Witcher Book Club channel in the Hansa Discord for more details, and we'll see you on Sunday, May 4th. Thank you to our patrons and our producer-level patrons, Katie, the Redhead of Toussaint, Jacob B., Charlotte from Mayberg Glamorai, the Original Roach, Libby, John of Roblia, Tom from Australia, Jill Kate the Tabby Witch, Ollie from Sweden, James Carson III, Miriam of Temeria, Softy, Lisa C., and Red Kite. If you would like to learn more about supporting Breakfast in Beauclair, visit patreon.com/breakfastinbeauclair. As for this episode, Kitty from the US and Tracie, aka Miss Magitek, call in for Andrzej Sapkowski's Baptism of Fire, Chapter 6. Join us as we discuss international Baptism of Fire editions, Peter Kenny's triumph, excitement for The Witcher 4, how Ciri fights for herself, the legend of Lara Dorren, our best Yzma impressions, perfect 10-year plans, parallels between the Lodge of Sorceresses and Dune's Bene Gesserit, the mustache-twirling kind of evil, the absence of good, and Hannibal Lecter, gynecologist. Without further ado, let's get to our discussion of Andrzej Sapkowski's Baptism of Fire, Chapter 6. Hey guys, welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair. My name is Alyssa, and today we're welcoming two members of our Hansa to the show. My first guest is a coach's wife, mom of one. She hails from Texas and attended the University of Missouri. Her professional career has been in hospitality with a focus on membership, and when she isn't momming or working, she enjoys gaming, reading, or finding new places to eat. You may also recognize her from our Discord discussions on The Witcher books. You recognize my second guest from their appearances on the show covering Netflix's The Witcher 108 Much More, 202 Kaer Morhen, and 303 Reunion. She's an award-winning tabletop RPG content creator who runs an online community called Magi RPG. She runs tabletop games like Cyberpunk, D&D, and Vampire the Masquerade, and also writes for our Talsorian Games, Cyberpunk Red publications. When she isn't hosting tabletop games, she enjoys cosplaying and has even expanded her creative horizons to include live-action role-playing, aka LARP. Please welcome Kitty from the US and Tracie, aka Miss Magitek from the US. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello. I'm excited to return.
And for your first book chapter, which I was surprised about. Yeah.
Yes. This is going to be a fun one to talk about from Baptism of Fire. It's a great book, so this should be a lot of fun.
Yes. So excited to have you back. And Kitty, welcome to the show. You've been a longtime listener to the podcast. So happy to have you on. And as we do with everybody, can you tell us about how you got into The Witcher?
Yes, thank you so much. So I am a happy member of the Hansa Discord. I'm so grateful for the group that you've built. One, I just wanted to say that first off, because sometimes I can jump into the Hansa for an hour and engage. Sometimes I jump in for 5 minutes and everybody is welcoming and so kind, generous. So I just wanted to again compliment you on creating such a great community and space.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Teacher's pet, we're deserved. I got involved into The Witcher. I was a COVID layoff, so I had some time on my hands, and my husband decided to present me with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, said, hey, I found a game I think you might like. famous last words.
Yeah.
So I completely fell in love with the narrative of the game and knew there had to be more. So realizing there were books, I finished 2 playthroughs and then I went through the book series doing the audiobooks and then reading alongside of them. I love being able to jump back and forth with mediums and just loving every bit of the content. Your playthrough after the book reads is just really enlightening too. So
Yeah.
I've continued wanting more Witcher lore, learning more about it, and then that's how I fell into Breakfast in Beauclair and learning more about your podcast. I've been gaming for a long time, since I was probably about 3 or 4 years old. My dad played Doom, Quake on PC, so I was the one jumping into his lap, attempting to try to play. And so this video game has just meant a lot to me. And so I'm so excited to be able to continue to grow my love and appreciation for it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much for sharing. And now I think that's even grown further. As I said, you and Softy, who will actually be on the next episode after you guys, now host in Discord book club discussions about the Witcher series, which has just been fantastic to see you guys get involved in. And you guys are so, like, you have such interesting conversations and so it goes so deep on the lore.
It's fun to have like Softy, your eloquent UK guest who has like a lot of understanding, a lot of thought provoking. And then you've got me, your Texas twang, who's just like, yeah, but when Henry Cavill took off his shirt that one time, and it's, but I'm just kidding a little bit, but we do have a really good balance of just conversations that everybody wants to be a part of and making sure that it doesn't feel too scholarly. It can be very welcoming and coming on in. So thank you. We are so excited to have your blessing to be able to continue to do those chapters. Softy and I want to get those back started up. So we'll get those back up here soon.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah. And Tracie, what's been going on with you since the last time you were on the show?
Yeah, it's just been keeping myself busy. In my free time, I do a lot of tabletop role-playing stuff. That's my free time, is just consumed by that. And it's been really great playing games. Now, I've kind of expanded outside of D&D. I think for years I played mostly D&D, but my friends and I have been trying a bunch of other games. My big thing is Vampire the Masquerade, which is another really fun role-playing game. It's a bit like darker. It kind of has the dark, gritty aspects that like The Witcher has. And I think that's just like my vibe. I like things where it's like there's nobody who is a hero, and it's just like that darker tones to the storytelling. I just gravitate to more than just like the typical D&D story where it's like you're the hero and it's like, it's like a clear like good versus evil, rather than like these morally gray stories where not everybody is a good person. So yeah. Yes, I brought with me my both of my Baptism of Fire versions of my book. So I bought the illustrated versions, which are amazing, but I never really read them. So for this particular recording, when I was rereading, I was like, I'm going to actually crack open one of these illustrated books. They've been like a display piece for me, the illustrated editions.
Yeah.
So this was a perfect reason to actually use it and read it rather than like my older editions that I have.
Oh, you're way ahead of me. Hachette, the publisher of the Witcher series, was kind enough to send me like the new illustrated books a few years ago. And they're beautiful, but they're very much set pieces with all of my other Witcher stuff, except I have them squirreled away where they don't see any sunlight because I don't I don't want the covers to get like all ruined.
Right.
They're beautiful. Really loved these editions as well.
Yes.
And I definitely need to make content with them at some point.
I know. I feel the same way. I would like to. They're gorgeous and they're absolutely worth like, even if you don't read them, they're honestly really nice to display on a bookcase. So I'm glad that I have them too.
I'm going to put some on my list. I think what's funny now is now that the new book just came out, I'm like, okay, maybe they'll make another set with a new book and collection. I was looking at your cover. I just have the...
Oh, wow.
That's the British version, right?
That's awesome.
That was a fun find because I like to write my books. I'm very tough on my books, if you will. But I love this copy. And I guess this is the version. This is how they do kind of see Milva.
Yeah, love the art on those. That's great.
Yeah. You kind of see Milva in the shadows on the new version that Tracie has, but she's got, I think, like war paint on. Not that one, the other one.
Oh, yes. I was like, wait a minute.
Does she also have paint on? Is that a shadow?
I think so.
Does. Yeah.
I think it's paint. I just really appreciate all her piercings.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm not paying attention to these cover arts, like these little details. I love it.
Somebody worked really hard on this.
Yeah, right. Truly, I need to appreciate these more.
So I have Baptism of Fire in English and in Italian, which is my Sapkowski signed edition. But I kind of want to get the other ones. I definitely want Baptism of Fire in Spanish because it has the Battle of the Bridge, which we'll cover in the next episode on it. And it has like Geralt and Ciri, and it looks very cool. But like I guess if I were to collect a number of books in different languages and a couple of editions, they would probably all be Baptism of Fire collection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Baptism of Fire is such a good title. Like, I know that that's something that kind of has been a common theme with other guests is Baptism of Fire. And I think this is actually one of the chapters. I don't think there's a reference to it.
You're right.
I actually think we don't get it thrown in our face this time.
I think Softy, who we recorded with just before this, was like, there's 13 instances of the phrase Baptism of Fire, 14 if you count something about being, like forged in fire or something like that. That wasn't quite, identical to the title. But I guess the only sort of reference to it would be the fire in Vilgefortz's lair being there to purge, but not really being successful. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that as well.
That's a great point. Softy and his word counts make me so happy.
I should ask him next time if he does that manually or if he has like a Kindle or something he can at least like search.
Control F, or search through. Yeah, because that would be impressive.
Well, on that note, today we'll continue our discussion of Andrzej Sapkowski's Baptism of Fire with Chapter 6, in which Francesca and Ida restore Yennefer and the Lodge of Sorceresses convenes. Dijkstra uncovers Vilgefortz's horrific experiments, and Ciri and the rats stage an ambush, and Tawny Owl hires Bonhart to kill her. Here's a quick synopsis on the chapter from future Alyssa. In Chapter 6 of Baptism of Fire, Ciri's disillusionment with life among the rats deepens. Haunted by nightmares and disconnected from the group's reckless pleasures, she snaps at Missile when pressed about her past. Their tension is interrupted by a violent ambush of a nobleman's carriage, during which Ciri kills without hesitation. When the rats threaten the noble's daughter, Ciri briefly reveals traces of her lost identity as a princess. Meanwhile, in Dol Blathanna, Francesca Fintabert meets Vadier de Rideau, head of Nilfgaard's intelligence. With Ida Aemona Psivny, a free elf of the Blue Mountains, the two elven sorceresses piece together Nilfgaard's interests: Vilgefortz, Yennefer, Ciri, Ithilne's prophecy, and the connection between the towers of Tor Lara and Tor Ziriel. Francesca unveils Yennefer, compressed into a jade statuette during the Thanid coup, and painfully restores her. Francesca and Ida update her on key events: Vilgefortz's disappearance, Tissa's suicide, Francesca's new queenship, Geralt's survival, and the sweeping Nilfgaardian victories that have devastated the north. Francesca also reveals Yennefer is being hunted, accused of escaping to Nilfgaard after Thanid. Yennefer travels with Francesca and Ida to Monte Calvo for the first official gathering of the Lodge of Sorceresses. There she meets sorceresses from both Northern and Nilfgaardian realms. Philippa Eilhart outlines the Lodge's aim to control political power through magic, proposing a controversial marriage between Ciri and Covir's crowned prince to solidify influence. As Yennefer shares Ciri's story, the Lodge examines the girl's elder blood lineage. Francesca recounts the tragic story of Lara Dorren and reveals how Ciri's heritage ties her to powerful magic. The Lodge agrees that Ciri is central to their plans while speculating on Emir's fixation with her. Meanwhile, Dijkstra uncovers a horrifying scene in one of Vilgefortz's abandoned lairs: dissected female corpses, including pregnant women, and sinister tools suggesting intentions to experiment on people with magical abilities. The Lodge suspects Vilgefortz informed Emir of Ciri's location, although Ciri confirms she's not in Nilfgaard. Yennefer, guided by Fringilla Vigo's friendly advice, escapes Monte Calvo by teleporting, leaving the Lodge stunned. Elsewhere, Nilfgaardian spy Stefan Skellen hires Bonhart, a brutal bounty hunter, to track down and eliminate Ciri and the rats. So now that we've gotten a synopsis on the chapter, I would love to hear some of your overall thoughts, highlights and lowlights. What did you love about, or hate, about Baptism of Fire, Chapter 6?
Yeah, Chapter 6 is a very heavy Lodge of Sorceress chapter, and that faction, the Lodge of Sorceresses, is one of my favorite factions in the world of The Witcher, which is why I think this chapter I was like happy to cover, because I know it's like a heavy chapter for the ladies. And I do love this like all female group coming together to like discuss the interests of the continent, really, and their role in it. And we get a lot of that in this chapter. So that's really like my favorite part and like one of my highlights of this chapter in particular, just because I love the Lodge so much.
I loved also that Sapkowski put Laredo in there. It's spelled differently than the Texas City, but it's a fun little like Western cowboy town that was known in the Wild Wild West. So I thought that was appropriate for the bandits to go to.
Oh, I love that.
It's just like, yes, one little Texas thing in there. I really love getting to see Ciri starting to challenge what people are pushing onto her rather than the narrative being pushed onto Ciri. Ciri's like, I want to change things. This isn't who I've always been. And we're getting to see this like almost a completion of a baptism of fire, if you will, from Ciri. What's going to come next for her? And that's really Ciri's having a brat summer, if you will.
Yeah. That is a great way to summarize it. Yes.
Yeah, I think both those are definitely call outs for me too. Like the Lodge of Sorceresses, as tangled as a lot of the content is from what they're discussing. I love seeing all of these women with different backgrounds, with different perspective, with different allegiances debate each other. I think having them in direct contact and conversation with each other just really highlights the nuances and the differences in all of their characters really, really nicely. So we see just how different they are from each other and just how much they kind of get on each other's nerves. And I think it really accentuates who they are in a really enjoyable way.
Yeah, some that would be considered like enemies in some way. We have Nilfgaardian sorceresses, we have Northern Kingdoms, like they would normally potentially be considered enemies. They come together and you know, the like elven sorceresses, there's definitely disdain, but they all kind of still come together and have these discussions in a civil way, just with the slight jabs at each other, which is always great. So it's always great dialogue to also listen to and see the personalities come out for each of the sorceresses. So I love it.
I found at one point I was having trouble following the narrative. And in my head, I go, well, I really don't think I understand any of this. Just to hear Sabrina Glasovic go, well, I don't think I understand any of this. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I remember that part. Yes.
These women are women.
Yes.
Because I think that honesty of just saying like, I'm confused is so refreshing, because you've got your sorcerers like Philippa, Yennefer, Ciri, who are definitely high level. And then I like Sabrina. She's just keeping it real.
Yeah. I love that.
I love her as a proxy for the reader as well. And Sapkowski does this here and there where he'll let characters just be like, I don't really know what's going on. And then he'll have somebody else explain it so that the reader can definitely catch up.
Yes.
Which is definitely appreciated, I think. Yeah, the stuff about Ciri also super fascinating. We've seen her, as we hear, like really get the taste for the robber's life. And it's wild how dispassionate she is about just killing now. She still enjoys it, but there's just something very like everyday about it, which feels super startling, I think, based on how we know her.
And she's had a lot of unique circumstances to put her as this killer, this Witcher training that has allowed her to jump into the rats as now a force of nature. And there's nobody telling her no. There's nobody saying, hey, maybe we should, reel it in a little bit. Really, Mistl's confrontation at the beginning is the closest thing we've had to anybody saying, hey, Ciri, are you okay? And it's not even really it's more of a, you don't tell us anything about you. You're quiet.
Yeah, she's had a lot of great like guardians at this point, but now we really see what it's like for her on her own, and with this group that is just a bunch of misfits, really. And watching her kind of adjust to their way of life is really interesting. And this part of Ciri's journey in the greater saga of The Witcher is a very interesting one to see, and to see where she goes from here. So yeah, I really enjoy it.
It's like she's fighting back.
Yeah.
She's taking everything that people have given her, whether it's good or bad, and she's like, if I'm going to be used, thrown around, I'm going to give it back to some people and take what's given to me and use it to my advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say talking about Ciri in this way makes me really excited for The Witcher 4.
Yes, I know.
I'm excited to see where they're going to take her.
So excited. That trailer, the preview that they gave us was so exciting. I'm with you. I cannot wait to see where they take Ciri. It's going to be great.
I shrieked. I audibly shrieked.
I was watching with my friends and I was screaming into the microphone, breaking everybody's ears. Like, it was so exciting.
We kind of like too that Ciri's not necessarily, she's not soft. She's rough, and you see a little bit of that Calanthe in her where it's like, especially in the carriage scene, she's starting to, I think, have her like her Calanthe and like, I am somebody formidable. You will recognize that.
Yeah, she's under all the layers. She's still a princess at heart. But yeah, what an interesting marker for her character as we continue to follow her down this path. I know we're going to talk about it later, so I'm not going to belabor it too much, but Bonhart's introduction in this book is just something that absolutely like floored me. I think every time I read it, it's just him as like a stone cold killer. And then when he's explaining to Skellen about, he doesn't see killing as having any moral ramifications. It's just a service that he renders for anybody who asks. And that Skellen lucked out because he found somebody who truly enjoys their job. Not even whores can say that. And it's just like, oh my God, who did we just get involved?
He's scary.
Yeah.
He's real scary. And like, you're right, like stone cold killer. It is a great introduction. And those lines are so good too. Like, he is very intimidating, and it seems like there's nothing like redeeming here about Bonhart. So yeah, it's a great introduction. You're right.
You've got evil Skellen who just wants Ciri dead because he just doesn't think that she will be the good of Nilfgaard. So that's his like weird mindset. He doesn't really care about her, like what powers. He's like, no, she just needs to go. She's a distraction. And then Bonhart's like, but is she interesting? Yeah. Like, should I? And it's this weird, like his lack of obsession with Ciri compared with Bonhart's obsession with Ciri before he's even like really met her. He's like, well, do you want her head? Like, it's like this very cold way of discussing somebody you haven't met yet, but still be fascinated with them.
Yeah. It's wildly unnerving. Like, anytime we like discuss anything with Bonhart, but like this section as well, just like shiver down the spine. Before we get to our discussion questions, I want to shout out some Peter Kenny love and audiobook love. For this chapter especially, I think we always come back to this whenever we shower Peter Kenny with praise and affection, because especially with the Lodge of Sorceresses, 11 women with distinct voices arguing, plus the narrator tone, just phenomenal masterclass.
We're not worthy.
Yeah.
It's so good.
We're not worthy.
Yep. Like, you know the Yennefer voice, you know the Philippa voice. Like, they're very distinct. And so it's true. Like, it's a lot of sorceresses to have the voices of, especially in the scene when they're all in the same room talking together. So yeah, it's great.
So good. If you haven't listened to the audiobooks, listen to the audiobooks, listen to this chapter. They're just absolute delight. So on that note, I would love to turn it over to our discussion questions. Pretty meaty chapter, but it starts with Sapkowski's beloved interstitials. And for this one, the human and elven versions of Lara Dorren's story present starkly different narratives. So what does this duality really reveal about themes of like perspective, bias, and historical interpretation in the series?
Yeah, there is certainly very different tales from the human versus the elves. And I love that later in the chapter when Francesca is recounting it, she also like calls to this and is like, yeah, they're very different versions, but sit down and I will tell you, the non-tainted version.
Yeah.
But which is interesting coming from an elf. But the human version. So we read at the beginning of the chapter, and the human version is like so like I felt felt like I was reading like a fable of like an evil witch, like cursing the humans. And so it was like, okay, that is how they are interpreting Lara Dorren here. While the elves are more like talking about this loss of life of a woman with her child and the cruelty of humans. And so, yes, very starkly different. And I just found it very interesting, the like evil witch versus the very like, oh, cruelty, humans, Dwan, they're so evil kind of thing. So yeah.
It's funny that the whole point is to get a unbiased version of events. And even Philippa is like, these are exactly the things that we were asked not to specify about. The fact that Sarah had to take the child from Laura Dern or else there'd be curses. So it's funny to see these intelligent women like come at each other with like, no, that's exactly what we said. Like, how hard is it to come up with unbiased historical truth? And we know it's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I think throughout the Witches series, as we jump forward and backward in time, we hear so many different perspectives of different events. And I think like this little break in the chapters does that so succinctly and so beautifully by having, you know, one half of the story be human and the second half be elven. And I think that's a beautiful way of juxtaposing those two things. But yeah, as you said, Tracy, it reflects that bias and how, I guess, grotesque the other side is. Like suddenly Sarah becomes a witch or Lara Dorren becomes a witch and they're larger than life. And of course, it inspires this fanatical fear in whoever's listening to that tale. Therefore, of course, Sarah's actions were justified against the witch. Of course, Lara Dorren's actions were justified in the face of like cruel humans. And I think it just perpetuates a lot of those beliefs against the other and then turns them into myths and legends that kind of like become stories that we tell our children and our children's children. And yeah, you get the legends.
It's crazy to think that, like, right now, there are people that won't ever know what happened with COVID and just like the interesting, unique time. And I'm like, I'm going to be that grandmother that's like, back in my day, we all had to wear masks and everywhere we went. And be like, okay, grandma. But it's, you know, the storytelling nature is something that I think is very identifiable with too.
Mm-hmm. Really just depending on who you talk to. It's like, what kind of story are you going to get? And yeah, like that's how it is with humans and elves in the world of The Witcher. They just have such different perspectives on how they've been treated and how they've gone through history. So yeah.
Yeah. And I, as you said, Kitty, I love that Sapkowski not only lays out the myths from both sides, but then also has Philippa and Francesca kind of being those voices of reason to say like, no, we're just trying to give historical fact, unbiased historical fact. But this is definitely a theme that we'll see over and over and over again. I think particularly as we push ahead to Tower of Swallows and Lady of the Lake, all about the stories and the legends and the fairy tales and hearsay, which is super fun. We see a couple snippets of Ciri in this chapter. At the beginning, Ciri is with the rats and she's with Missile and she seems to be very upset, I think, and very agitated about her circumstances and what's been going on in her life. How would you guys say Ciri's reluctance to share her past with Missile and the other rats shapes their relationship? And what does this say about like trust and intimacy for her?
Yeah, she definitely doesn't trust them the way she's trusted other people she's traveled with at this point. Like, obviously, she doesn't trust them like Geralt or Yennefer. But also, like, to me, Ciri is probably just still being overly cautious and guarded because she knows that she's like the most wanted person right now. And she, you know, giving herself a fake name and, you know, keeping herself a bit more closed off, I think just makes sense for where she is. Even though she is very close with them and Missile especially, I think she still is just being overly cautious about her current situation and her status. So yeah, it makes sense to me.
I think she wants to write her own narrative. I think she's tired of other people telling her, you're the Princess of Sintra, you're a member of the Rats. And so she's just like, I'm not going to be tickled anymore. I'm not going to be told what to do. And it's a very kind of like a camel, the straw that broke the camel's back. It's just tickling, you know, this isn't something aggressive, mean, and it's just, Ciri's just like, enough.
Yeah. It's nice that she stood up for herself there too, though. Like, and she was just like, no, I'm not gonna play these types of games. And yeah, I really like that.
I do think a certain element of like isolation does protect her. I think not just because she's able to be anonymous, like as the continent's most wanted. Like obviously the anonymity helps her just kind of get by and just be Falca for the moment. But I think on the other side, I wonder if there's kind of like a subconscious desire to protect herself. I think if she was to reveal that and put into words that she was the Princess of Sintra, she was the Witcher girl, she has lost everything and has fallen so far as to become just like a teenage bandit, by putting voice to that story, I think just makes everything seem more real and makes that fall a lot more painful.
She has, I mean, been through an ordeal that really nobody can identify with.
Yeah.
From Sintra to Cahir, then the desert, the unicorn.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredulous.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, why don't you just let me tickle you?
Yeah. Imagine just like, okay, Missile, hold on. This is kind of a lot, but sit down and let me tell you. And it would almost be like unbelievable. Like,
Yeah.
are you really the princess of Sintra and then you went to work with Witcher? Like, just it almost seems unbelievable. But Ciri's been through a lot.
You went to Brokilon Forest twice. Not once.
Yeah.
Twice.
And came out alive twice.
Yeah.
Absolutely unheard of. Yeah, the element of like intimacy though is really interesting because she's not really building these relationships with a foundation. It does feel like she's kind of just like getting by with the Rats for the moment, which, you know, it is what it is. Like it's I think a friendship of convenience, especially because she needed to attach herself to somebody.
And it kind of allowed her the opportunity to be able to use this training that she got from the Witchers, because now that she has renounced her magic, what does she have? And so now her physicality is much more important, and she gets to express it with the Rats, and they're just going to continue letting her kill because that's what they need.
Yeah, that's her fighting prowess. And I like that she takes on the name Falca because she just has some elements of like the Falca of legend in the way she turns into a bit of a killer there, Ciri. So, she gets a little more violent here. I don't think we've really seen her like this violent. She's really living to that name of the Falca of legend. So I really like that.
Yeah, and it definitely does seem to be an enjoyable endeavor for her. I know I said dispassionate, but I think that was about like the act of killing itself. But like, as Missile said, she can tell that the robber's life excites Ciri, or she finds some sort of release in it. And it's definitely no longer about survival at a certain point because she's gone past that, and now it's kind of like active aggravation.
There are no gods here, only monsters.
Exactly.
I cannot wait.
You got to get that pre-order like immediately.
I'm on Baldur's Gate 3, just another playthrough, and I'm really just hesitating to go back for a Wild Hunt playthrough, Witcher 3 Wild Hunt playthrough. Just
always good to go back. That's like me I play it on my Switch, so I get to just get cozy on my couch and play on the Switch. So
we were just talking about Thronebreaker in the next episode, but I was like, oh, I think I want to download Thronebreaker for the Switch now, because I have The Witcher 3 for PS5, but I've been resisting opening it because I feel an obligation to like stream it or make content about it or something. But I still haven't played The Witcher since reading the books.
Wow.
So I need to, I need to go back and do that.
That's even more than the softy DLC drama, which I continue to instigate on the Discord Hansa. So it's
I
fine.
still haven't played the DLCs.
Wow. That's my favorite part of the game, actually, are the DLCs. So
I'm anxiously waiting for when you're done with the books and then you do the gaming playthrough, and then Tracie and I can come back and being like, it's been 10 years, but you're here now.
Exactly.
I know. I just slowly switched from podcasting to streaming.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And you'll be able to see my lovely chunky little Zog in the back growling. The dream.
It's the ties, I think. And you know, feel free, we won't get into it, but the game does such a good job of these lovely ties into it, especially there are even mentions of the Hansa in The Witcher 3, and it's such a nice little tie-in when you've gotten such an attachment to these characters and get them mentioned or little highlights in there.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I'm looking forward to, is just suddenly like being able to point at the screen being like, I get that, I get their efforts, because I didn't really understand any of that the first time I played it in like 2016. So
Yeah.
I sobbed when I saw Regis after my book read through.
Yeah.
Oh.
And seeing him, and I'm like, you're
He's
telling me
great.
I get to play
I know.
80% of the DLC with him?
I know.
Apologize. Just can't
That's-
get just emotional.
That's how I feel with the Lodge. Like when I see any of the sorcerers, like when Philippa makes appearance, like even like Margarita and like all of these characters, and even in The Witcher 2, like there's even more presence of many of the sorceresses, and I'm like, yeah, let's go the Lodge. So yeah, it's great.
Did you see the deleted scene that was the lodge in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt? And it reveals that they were going to write in that Yennefer betrays the lodge in order to like to get another step. It was a small addition, but they dropped it. But you got another lodge experience at the very end, and I just thought, I was like, that was a very nice way to tie it. It was. Please look it up.
I might have seen that like years ago, and I forgot that was a thing.
Yeah.
I do want to go back and rewatch that, or watch it, just because that would have been so good to have in the game. Oh my gosh.
Because and let's tie it back in, because it's really great to see Yennefer's like uncomfortability in the entire scene and how it grows, and like the entire time I'm listening to it, I'm getting more uncomfortable.
Yeah, when she's learning more about everything that's happening with the lodge, you can tell she's like, this is bad. I need to get out of here.
Yeah, we can talk about that too. So Yennefer refuses to commit to staying at Monte Calvo and ultimately escapes. And do you think that, you know, given everything she knows, was this the right decision, considering the lodge's resources might have helped protect Ciri? Or does it, you know, show her defiance, her independence are way more valuable than cooperating?
I can tell you that if I'm sitting at a table with a bunch of ladies and something's happening with my daughter, goodbye. I gotta go. The attachment that Ciri and Yennefer have surpasses a mother-daughter in a way, and I will say that as a mom, so that way we don't like upset anybody, because it's a found family.
Yeah.
And with found family, you'll do anything, and I can't even question Yennefer to try to leave. And she just knows that not only is the situation that Ciri's getting herself into dangerous, it's one that she may have accidentally been a part of.
Yeah.
And so we already know that growing guilt. So girl, bye.
I totally agree. I don't think Yennefer realized the gravity of it when she first arrived. So like she showed up to this meeting, like Francesca, you know, drags her to this meeting that she's like, okay, I'll sit and entertain it. And, you know, these are like, in some ways, like some of them are her sisters. Maybe she's not like super close with them, but it's like she's worked with a lot of these sorceresses and she knows them well. And she's sitting down, and as they're going through this plan and these like schemes about what we could do with Ciri, I think, yes, that's where Yennefer's like, oh, this is serious, and they have some plans, and yeah, like I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm out. So I totally agree that like once she realized what they were planning, she wanted to get out of there, and I totally am with her. on that.
I think it's also that the impossible task of finding Ciri when they assumed that she was lost in Nilfgaard, suddenly, oh no, Vilgefortz has her, and suddenly the target seems much more attainable and much more concrete. That she's like, oh, I can just go after Vilgefortz now, rather than not being able to do anything in Nilfgaard and having my hands tied. I'll just kill this guy. And like that feels like a much more direct path, I think, for her.
Yeah.
There's like a 5-step action plan she could take.
I also like in this meeting the moment when Yennefer is recounting her own relationship and things that she knows about Ciri, but it's very clear she's not trying to put any emotion into it because from my understanding, it's that she doesn't want to lead any of them on that she has a deep attachment to Ciri. And so she's recounting what she knows in a very drawl tone. And I think it's Triss, or at least Triss is noticing some of these things and picking up on it too. And I really liked that whole segment of this chapter as well. That it was just very much Yennefer trying to remain calm when she's increasingly probably sweating of all of these things that are happening.
It's almost written like a TV show sometimes. I see it as the camera's panned in on Yennefer, who is just trying to remain calm. And then it pans over to Triss, who's like, why isn't she looking at me? I'm trying to get Yen's attention. And Yen is just like, I will give myself away. And then you've got the other attentions of the lodge members. And especially, when Yennefer's done with her story, she gets swept away. Margarita, she can't talk to Margarita. So you can see, like you said, there are some alliances, or even just some we do want to connect in a way. But Yennefer is prevented from doing so.
And something that you brought up before we started recording, Kitty, do you want to talk about how Yennefer might have escaped?
So at the beginning, it's brought up that her pendant does have magical abilities. We know that. But there's a boundary of some sorts over Monte Carlo. So at the very end, where her and Fringilla are discussing, we love the way they banter, by the way, where it's like, I would not advise a friend to teleport, but it's good we're not friends. Yeah. Just this very clever way that they speak. At one point, Fringilla drops some water on the table by opening an oyster. We know that sometimes water can be used in transportation spells. So I'm wondering if she was able to channel some of that water that Fringilla left or something. That's kind of my little notion. There are some ways that people find other ways via water too. So I'm wondering if Yennefer knew where to teleport based off of some of that.
Yes, it was made known in the chapter. So it's it could have been something that was used, and though it's not explicitly said. So I think that's a really good thought of how she did escape. And I love that theory.
And we love that Sapkowski leaves it open-ended.
Yeah.
Is it Asire that says, I won't ask how you did it? And, Fringilla just feigns ignorance. Yeah. So I appreciate that we're meant to discuss, or we're meant to wonder exactly how she did get away with it.
Yeah.
She's like, I've never liked her, but I've never questioned her abilities.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of at the very end of Harry Potter when Dumbledore does flee and Kingsley Shacklebolt goes, you got to admit, Dumbledore has style.
Yeah.
You love a good exit.
Yeah. It also makes really clear when Asir does ask Fringilla where she headed, Fringilla's like, how am I supposed to know what coast these oysters came from?
Yes.
And whenever I've read that, I've just assumed that, Fringilla doesn't know the geography of the Northern Kingdoms. So even if Yennefer did say something, she would just be like, I don't know where that is. People ask me where places are in Brooklyn. I'm like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I have no mental map for Brooklyn. So I kind of assumed it was just her way of being like, she could tell me, I just wouldn't be able to tell you what that meant. But that Yennefer used the oysters as the attractor to leave the castle would make that line make perfect sense.
Yeah. Very much so.
We discussed our unified concern of the oysters, so we're going to make them have a narrative purpose here.
Yep.
Yes. Chekhov's oysters. Yep. And during this meeting of the lodge, it's revealed, as we said, that Philip and the lodge intend to marry Ciri to a Kovirian prince as part of a long-term vision for magic on the continent. question for you guys. Should their end game of like empowering magic, should that justify their willingness to use Ciri and other individuals like pawns?
Yeah, to me, this shows like this establishes them in my mind as a faction, like a major faction in the Witcher universe, like Nilfgaard or Northern. Like they have clear goals and they are, laying out what their plans are. And I love it from a storytelling perspective. Philippa brings up her whole plan, and it's like, yeah, like magic has never had this absolute power, but now it's time to fix that. And it was very much, she like just talked about things where it's like, we have a very important role in this world. Like we are wielders of magic, and so we have to do what we need to do to protect the interests of magic. I think it's a valid thing to present and be like, hey, like all that stuff happened at Sodden. Like we have our own thing here now, and we have to figure out what we're going to do for the future of magic. Like, let's get together and figure this out. Tissaya's gone. That's it. We have to figure out what we're going to do now. So again, there's no good interests in the world of The Witcher. So based on what their circumstances are as magic wielders, they're like, yes, this is our goals. And this is what we have to do to meet those goals. So
they want a piece of the pie. I think for so long, especially the female mages in particular, which way they discuss, they're like, we could just be errand girls if we're not careful about how we present ourselves on councils. And I love the femininity of it all too. There is and maybe it's not unspoken, but there's a kind of bond, especially when it is either, the female-only organization, a male-only organization, because especially here in particular with the Lodge, there is an unsense of spoken of that we will do everything for the benefit of magic for each other. And it's not specified on their gender, but the fact that these women all interact with each other with that embodiment and it's unspoken, it's a very powerful thing. It's a little sorority-like-esque.
Yeah.
And I was in a sorority, and there's some kind of like fun magic when you've got a bunch of women together and you're either doing something for what you think is the benefit for all. And maybe they're a little bit drunk on their power, but it's just like you get giddy. And I appreciate this like sorority linking of it. That's kind of how I envisioned it a little bit.
Yeah, I enjoy the sorority references and the frat references we have in the following discussion. I will say the one thing about their plan, and I think they do acknowledge this, is that it does sound like everything has to go exactly right. It's almost like Yzma in like Emperor's New Groove being like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And if all of that goes well, I will do steps 4, 5, and 6.
The poison for the Cusco.
Yes, the poison to kill Cusco. I think one of the sorceresses brings that up. They were just like, okay, like we have to find a woman who both meets the interests of the Lodge and also meets Kovir's interests, which are like mutually exclusive. We can get people to fall in love with each other. There are aphrodisiacs, there are spells, there are potions. We can create genealogies, but still it's like making a 10-year plan and knowing that if you don't do step 1 right, like step 43 is probably screwed. So I think that there's a lot of like aspiration here. And I don't doubt their ability to see this through if they put their hearts and souls into it. But they still don't have Ciri yet.
Yeah.
But to come back to the question, like, does this justify the way that they're talking about Ciri and the way that they're talking about what the future of the continent will look like? I do think that sorceresses and mages have like such unique long-term vision. I think we've spoken about this before in the show. Philippa talks about kind of the rise and fall of kings as if they're like animals, like such short life cycles. And in the 400 years she's been alive, she's seen empires rise and fall, and who knows what's going to happen. So if you have effectively like an omnipresent view over all of the politics and happenings on the continent, you can kind of guide that more in like a long-term way. And I think that's her goal. Whether or not it's admirable, I'm not sure, but it certainly helps to have a singular vision. I just don't know if this is the one.
It's, especially with several video games, you're given choices and you'll be given the story later on deciding those choices, and you really don't know. And I think that's what's really interesting about this is how many options Ciri has that are none within her own decision making. But right now she has an option of princess life. She could be an ultra power sorceress. She could be Emir's bride, as we know right now. She could be a witcheress. She could be a leader. So there's like, right now it's like, what is Ciri going to do? So just to challenge like the obvious of like, no, nobody should be deciding what you should do with your life. You should make your own decisions. But like, is Ciri capable of making her own decisions? Is a human that powerful something that we should just, let's see what happens? I think that's maybe what Philippa thinks in her head. She goes, I have to do something because the alternative is nobody is watching what Ciri is doing, and she falls into the wrong hands.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I had been thinking about when I was rereading this, I don't know if either of you are too familiar with Dune, the Dune series, Frank Herbert's Dune.
Through Wikipedia exclusively, but yes.
Okay, yes. Dune
I've read ahead on Wikipedia.
Dune is one of the other like book series that I have multiple editions of because it's like there's a pretty special edition I have to have. But Dune also has a female organization called the Bene Gesserit, and they are like more mystical. And so Dune is also like a feudalistic sci-fi world where there are like kings and emperors and stuff, and they, you know, do a lot of like marrying for kingdoms and things like that. And the Bene Gesserit have very similar goals to the Lodge of Sorceresses, and I didn't realize that there was such a similar like crossover here of like an all-female organization that they are also kind of trying to get certain kingdoms to marry to find who they like is like their chosen messiah, really, to like better advance humanity and protect their interests. And it's like that's kind of also what Philippa is doing here. She's trying to protect magic, and like we need to have this one chosen girl be on the throne, and we need to kind of be, she needs to be a pawn in our goals and interests. And so I was like, wow, this is like, there's like a very interesting crossover there from like another book series that I love. And I want to do like a whole deep dive into this now of like these female organizations and their secret goals and schemes that they have plots in these series, because I just love it.
Bitches get shit done.
Yeah,
truly.
It's always my favorite faction too. I'm like, I love the Lodge. I love the Bene Gesserit. It's like, there's something about that I just love.
I like the checklist for like how to create a faction, have a really big group, and then create a list of shadowy goals.
Yep, secret goals. Yeah, this like all-female organization, just because it makes them more powerful and cool.
Oysters?
Oysters.
Maybe. Yeah.
Oysters in space.
Yeah.
Everything nice. So as we're talking about like Elder Blood, Lara Dorren, it does make me wonder, like, because all of their plans rest on Ciri and Ciri's Elder Blood. Do you think Philippa would have gone through with this had that not been an option? Like, do you think she would have still taken stuff over? I mean, granted, they wouldn't have been in this situation to begin with, but I feel like if she didn't have kind of like a golden goose and there wasn't like a quote unquote obvious path forward, I wonder if like the Lodge would have even come into existence had it not been for Ciri.
She'd probably still be shacking up with Dijkstra.
Yeah.
Like trying to figure out
the lesbomancy.
Yeah, right.
When they said, "Oh, Philippa, I imagine you're the candidate." That before she revealed that it would not be her, it would be Ciri. I thought that was interesting because I'm like, what is Philippa's current standing? Her and Dijkstra, they still correspond with each other and rely on each other as spies, if you will, more so. But it's kind of like, I don't think, like you said, I don't think she's seeing this opportunity and seizing it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like Philippa's always scheming. Like that's her character. She's always scheming. She's one of my favorite characters in the series. So I love that about her. So it's like, yeah, maybe she would have still tried to. I think she's once Tissaia was gone, I feel like she was like, this is my opportunity to swoop in.
Yeah. Owl's wings.
Yeah. Exactly. With her as an owl. And make her own thing. But definitely like, yeah, the Ciri thing is just, she's just like, yes, this is key. Like, this is the key. So
yeah. Feels like oil on fire, adding Ciri to that.
Yeah.
Definitely an accelerant for her plans. Yeah. So turning away from the Lodge for a moment, we get some wild introductions and like revisits to what's happening on the more horrific sides of the continent right now in those shadowy corners of the world. And how does the horrific scene in Vilgefortz's lair and Stefan Skellen's hiring of Bonhart really shift the stakes for like both Ciri and the other characters? And what does it say about their methods and goals?
It's like if Hannibal Lecter was a gynecologist.
Oh man. Yeah, it was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
The graphic nature of it, it's obvious what the end game is. And as all women here, we're all like that internal, like, that you, when you were reading, understanding what the overall mission is. And a lot of it too, there's just enough that's left out where I'm like, actually, I'd appreciate a few more details because I think my head's worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, yeah, this was like evil villain shit that's happening here.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is very clear that the stuff that Vilgefortz was doing, even like Dijkstra was like, okay, this is kind of a lot. And like, he couldn't even keep it together and was like, I don't know what mages I can trust at this point. Like, there's a lot going on. And then we, also see Skellen and Bonhart. And I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but just like another stone cold killer who just has no redeemable qualities. So I think just like both of these more villainous scenes in this chapter are playing up to like what we are going to see in the future of like what happens with them. And it's like, it's intimidating and very scary.
Yeah, the bones, like when it's like, we found bones, sir, in the well. Like it's like, okay, well, you can understand. It's like, well, how long has this been going on for? I love the part where Dijkstra is like, oh, he's going to move him to desk work. Oh, maybe not. And these quick narratives that Sapkowski gives you. I'd spoken with Softy because I said, Softy, sometimes I make the mistake of just like kind of trying to read too quickly. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, they're not even in the same place anymore. I don't even think I skipped 2 sentences, but in that like 2 sentences, you get what Dijkstra feels. It's important that he looks distinguished in front of his men. He has certain feelings about people being weak. Like you just get all of this with such a short narrative. It's fascinating. But I love like the perfume handkerchiefs so he could get little ways. Yeah, I mean, Dijkstra just has all these little tricks up his sleeve. And I really liked that you posed a question about how, because at some points you get a very soft Dijkstra, like where he's like, that bastard. But the whole time I'm just like, this seems like, he seems like an actor. Like that's something you would see on a stage, like that bastard, like Sunset Boulevard or something, like very over the top.
Talking about Peter Kenny real quick, like one of my favorite voices that he does is the Dijkstra voice. It's very regal, but also kind of, it has like a bit of an edge to it. So I love the Dijkstra voice.
Well, you can tell that. So did CD Projekt Red too, because it's a very good carryover.
Yes.
And that way they describe him as pig-headed. And somehow they did create this like piggy sound for him.
Yeah. It always just sticks in my mind, the description the first time we see Dijkstra, it looks like 2 orcas laying over a whale or something like that, of just the size of him and how formidable he is. And that just always like sticks in the mind. It's like such a weird description.
It's
very vivid though.
We get 8-pack Graham McTavish, but that's fine.
Yeah, but we know that.
But we know. We're not complaining.
I know, right?
Mean, it's still 8-pack Graham McTavish.
Yeah.
I hope he appreciates being referenced like that. I don't.
Yes.
Yeah, 8-pack Graham McTavish.
Totally title case. Yeah, I think like for Vilgefortz, Skellen, and Bonhart, it does feel like Vilgefortz and Skellen and then Bonhart will do anything to achieve their goals, like Ciri at any cost. Which is, I think, like the very scary thing. Like when you think about, they found 4 corpses, the one that they examined, plus the pile of bones in the well, and the amount of women that this must have been, and how long this must have gone on, that everything about this space is contaminated except for the steel like throne that he has constructed just to hold Ciri. And it's like her is an end goal at any cost to life. Same thing with Skellen. He employs Bonhart, and we see the same there. Although he's not necessarily the one who's doing the killing, he's happy to hire somebody to kill everybody and anyone in order to get her at any cost. So yeah, it's scary to think about characters like this on the continent coming after one of our beloved characters.
There's a lot of like people we could consider maybe the baddies, like Emperor Amir, which is obviously open for whatever interpretation you want, or like Philippa, like she could be considered an antagonist. But these villains are really like the mustache twirling kind of evil, more so than maybe the more questionable antagonists. Like you could debate, that Philippa may or may not be an antagonist, or maybe even Amir if you really wanted to, or some of the other kings and kingdoms. But like these feel a bit more like, okay, like what they're doing is not great. So
yeah. When even the morally questionable characters debate their methods and actions,
yes,
then you're kind of like, okay, we're kind of in a different stratosphere now.
Exactly.
Ciri is just so integral to everyone's plans. And it's just more and more concerning. What is her outcome? And what is it that makes her so valuable to so many groups of people? We know for some, but this discovery kind of is just like, what in the hells? Like, what are they going to do? Like, we still don't understand what the end game is, though. We just know that there's no stopping it, really. There's not going to be.
Yeah, I think that leads us really nicely into our last question as well. So Sapkowski frequently blurs the lines between like good and evil in all of his characters. We talk so much about moral grays in the Witcher series. And how does chapter 6 really explore like good and evil, particularly with the Lodge, the Rats, and Vilgefortz?
I think we just get very different aspects of like this good and evil. Like the Lodge is an organization that has intentions that may or may not be considered good for the continent. Same thing, like the Rats, they are really just like a kind of bandit group. And then, Vilgefortz, he is just sorcerer gone full baddie here. So I just think that there's a lot of different ways that we can look at this morally gray. So it's not just so one end of that spectrum of like bad guy versus good guy, but there's just varying different levels here in this chapter from my own interpretation of it. That's what I love about the world of The Witcher, is just all of these different groups. All of them have their own motivations, and none of them are good, but some have varying levels of what you could consider like they are very, very bad, or they are like kind of bad, or So yeah, that's what I really like about these different groups that we check out in this chapter.
Everybody definitely has their own motivations, and they think they are justified in their motivations. And that's kind of what the terrifying part is that based on whatever point of view you're going off of, they almost are trying to just say like, oh, well, because of what I'm doing, it's okay. It is okay that I'm using a sadistic killer to hunt down Ciri, because then Nilfgaard will be better for it. That will be the end goal. Vilgefortz wants Ciri to further his own missions and goals. The Lodge wants to be able to have, and the good and evil is it really, it makes us question whether it's maybe not so much as good and evil, but what is the decision that's best in the right time and in the moment. I think from what we know with Ciri, she hasn't really been given a lot of options. It's just kind of she's had to go with the flow and whatever she's presented with. And right now, we're seeing that change a little bit, where it's like, okay, well, what do you want to do moving forward now? And we're giving a little bit of autonomy back to some of these characters.
Yeah. Ciri's somebody that like we want to follow, because we've been with her since like her conception. Like we've been with her for the last, like, according to the Lodge's reckoning, like 15 years. And we want to believe that she is a good character. She is our heroine. She is our coming of age like hero. But we see that like evil is really taking root in her in a way that, it's really uncomfortable to watch, like as like a proxy for Geralt and Yennefer, who aren't overlooking her, but we are as a reader. And I think like seeing these changes in her, I think gives us a lot of conflict and a lot of pause in a character that we want to love suddenly being kind of unlovable in this moment as she continues to go down this path. With the lodge, like what you brought up, Tracy, I think that there's in one aspect or one like understanding of like morality, there can be a difference between intent and outcome. Even if the intention is good, like if the outcome is bad, was it morally right? I think that is like a huge question mark on the lodge's actions because, as you said, they have intentions of forwarding magic and like unifying the continent in some capacity in the long term. But do we agree with their methods? Not sure. And then, I think Vilgefortz, Skellen, and Bonhart are a bit of a write-off in their mustachio-twirling little gang.
Well, and it's a good thing to point out, too, because Softy can word count me, but I don't think Geralt is mentioned in this chapter at all.
No, I think we take a break from like the whole Hansa plot line in this whole chapter, which is interesting.
And if we want to overanalyze it, it's almost like the absence of good in this entire chapter. Geralt is what we see as good, as our most good character, if you will, including the rest of the Hansa. So I think it might be an opening of us, like you say, recognizing that Ciri is taking a lot of these evil influences and holding on to them. And since we didn't get any insight into Geralt in the Hansa's chapter, they are not aware of Ciri's development. And I think that's another viewpoint that we see how Sapkowski says, what are these influences that come over Ciri, and the noticeable absence of the Hans here.
Yeah, that is something interesting to point out. I've had to stop myself from asking this question on every single episode because one of the questions I always ask is like, humor, and how does humor integrate with like the chapter and like as a writing element? And after a while, it just obviously became a repetitive question. But come to think of it, this is the only chapter where we don't see kind of like outright humor in either the happenings of the plot or the content of like what's being said. Usually he'll like knock in something funny, like genuinely funny here and there. I think the closest we get is probably the coy interaction between Fringilla and Yennefer, but there's nothing really amusing about this or bumbling in any way compared to the rest of Baptism of Fire. It does feel like that kind of like total moment of darkness. In the context of the rest of the book, if you're imagining the book is like a traditional story, you kind of have that like silence of the night and like right before the climax. And that's what this feels like now that you bring it up.
They were literally making fish soup the last chapter.
I know.
Like having a fun time making fish soup. But it's like you said, this is that chapter where it's like, okay, this is the penultimate chapter, I believe.
Yeah.
So everything, this baptism of fire, as we know, is almost complete, quite literally.
Yep.
And so we know the buildup's happening. We're just really nervous to see, I think, what happens.
Yeah. All of the big plot lines get like moving forward. So like we had the Hansa, like we learned about, Geralt's uncanny group getting together. And now this is everything else that's happening in the continent. And it's pretty dark.
Yeah. Although I've been thinking about this quite a bit lately. If I was to, as a Witcher content creator, describe each of the books in a really shitty one-sentence summary, like I think Baptism of Fire would be like, this is the one where everybody makes friends.
Yeah.
And I think like we've seen Geralt's doing that, but I think, Ciri's befriended the rats. Yennefer has her lodge, regardless of what she does with it. Like everybody finds friends in this book, and I think we see that kind of come to fruition here.
This is the creating of alliances, some good, some bad. I definitely think that you're seeing people come together to either move forward their intentions. The Lodge, Stefan Skellen, and Bonhart. So yeah, this is definitely okay, whether your plan is good or evil, it's moving forward now.
Yeah.
On that note, as we close down our discussion, do you guys have any final thoughts on Baptism of Fire, Chapter 6?
I craved carrot juice after reading that Yennefer had carrot juice. I was just like, that sounds so good. Like, I think I'll just have some carrot juice. Surprised that carrot juice isn't that good.
Yeah. Not one of my favorites,
No,
but
no.
imagine being stuck in a little jade. What was it, a jade like figure or a jade
Statuette,
statue
yeah.
for X amount of time? That sucks.
It was like 47 days. I was like, that's like
Yeah.
Jesus in the desert. My
Right.
God, like, that's so long.
That's rough. Yennefer's been through it, and I
Yeah.
almost forget that this happens to her. And I was like, man, that is rough.
Yeah, I know we didn't really talk about it at length, but like the decompression is such like a fascinating scene. And seeing that happen, it's like I think I forget when I read the book that like, oh yeah, we haven't seen Yennefer since Thanedd. We haven't seen her since Time of
Yeah.
Contempt. Where has she been the last 5 chapters? I think the thing that I love about the Lodge of Sorceresses too is particularly when no men are around, how real the girl vibe
The
is.
girlies, yeah.
And just her being like, I'm butt naked in this fountain pissing on these goldfish, which will be the episode artwork. I managed to find like a real etching of like a woman sitting on the edge of a fountain with goldfish, and I was like, that's it.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
very slapstick, that whole scene.
Yeah.
Like with the ocelots and then the reappearance. Like I visualize Yennefer plunging in there, and then you're right, just that cool, like, by the way, I peed in here.
That is probably the only element of humor I think we do have in the in the
Quote
chapter.
unquote, something lighthearted.
She's like, oh, my kidneys.
Yeah.
Check for blood while you're in there, by the way.
Yeah.
Like we said, I think there is like a high level of understanding between the lodge where they can have these just comical conversations that aren't funny to them, but I still really laugh at the way that Fringilla and Yennefer chatted at the end of Monte Carlo, where they just talk in circles around each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My other thought, like that I didn't bring up earlier, was like interesting that it was Fringilla that was the one to like have the keen perceptive eye and be like, Yennefer is plotting an escape. I'm gonna make my way over and let her know that I know, and I'm gonna let her do it. It was kind of a power move by Fringilla. Like she just let that happen. She's like, I know this is happening, but I'm gonna let you do it. So that's just another reason why I love the sorceresses. They all are just like, yeah, I'm gonna let whatever happen, what I want happen, and I love their whole attitude toward the world. It's great.
Would the world be better or worse if we all aspired to be like that?
I know. I have a portrait of Philippa that I hang up because again, she's one of my favorite characters. I'm just like I'm like I aspire to her in like my D&D games. Maybe not in real life, but I'd like to be a scheming character like Philippa in my fantasy world. For sure.
I was listening to it might have been like an ebook or something that was talking about like, you know, how Beyonce has Sasha Fierce as her like onstage persona. And then Adele ended up making, I think, like Sasha Carter or something like that for her own onstage persona. And I feel like to step into the shoes of a sorceress, like if you ever need to do like a big work presentation
just
or
pretend to be them. Yeah.
Just embody Fringilla, embody Philippa, tell them to screw off. And
That's so true.
Especially like where Philippa slaps the table in the middle of the meeting. Like in the future when I'm in a meeting and I'm just going to be like,
enough.
These exactly the kind of trivialities that we dispensed with earlier.
Exactly. That's perfect.
With the voice as well, just inexplicably using Peter Kenny's Philippa.
Fully take on the persona.
When you do the next closet play, I will do the Philippa braids and I'll just put a ribbon around my eye. And then that will be, I will channel my inner Philippa. I wish I could, I don't have any ribbon right now.
You've got now until October to get some.
Yeah.
If you go now, you'll probably hit all the Christmas discounts.
Yeah. Get some nice ribbon.
And have you guys seen some really cool artwork on the sorceresses, like some fan artwork?
Ooh, fan artwork and like really nice like cosplays where they're able to get the whole lodge together. Stunning. Yeah.
The dream. Yes. I love looking at lodge sorceress artwork. It's my favorite.
Well, and it's so neat, like the little details we got from him, the vermilion hair. I also love that he focuses, and I do have to, when we did get one boob instance here.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, like, we got less breasting boobly than we normally do when we talk about the sorceresses. But yeah, Fringilla's fantasy about like, okay, there's no sex slaves with like bedazzled pubic mounds. And I was like,
oh my
wait,
God. Yeah.
The ordeal is when Yennefer was in the fountain and it goes, the water level coming up to her breasts. I'm like,
Yeah.
really?
Oh my
Really?
gosh.
We went
Yeah.
so far.
So true.
Where was the water level? Not shoulder. Not.
He does, though, talk at length about how everybody was like covered up to the neck when they actually meet. And it's just like, we're not going to breastly boobly here, but
Yeah.
we're going to mourn the lack of breasts in this scene and spend 3 paragraphs on it.
Yeah. When the girlies are together, I guess we can cover up, you know?
Yeah.
But when they're in the courts, yeah.
We'll literally and figuratively bring the girlies together. Yeah.
Bring
so
the
funny.
girlies.
Oh my goodness. And on that note, at least we inject some humor into our discussion today.
Yes.
And we'll leave Bonhart and Vilgefortz in the dirt. But yeah, what a fun discussion of the penultimate chapter of Baptism of Fire. And that'll be it for our show today. Kitty, Tracie, thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode, and thank you to our Hansa for listening. So where can people find you both? And is there anything that our community can help you with, or anything that you would like to share with them?
Sure. You can find me on the Hansa Discord. I tend to jump on there a couple times a week, and I'm also on Instagram at Kitty Elizabeth with no vowels, so you can figure that one out. But feel free. I am living a pretty normal life here, and I think it's really great that you've brought me and Tracie here, who are both really big Witcher fans, and I think it's great that you've shown us like how Witcher fans can be very different, and so I'm appreciative of that on that end.
Yes, it was so great to chat with you, Kitty. I know this is our first time meeting and interacting, so I also really enjoyed this discussion. So thank you, and thanks, Alyssa, of course. But you can find me everywhere at Miss Magitek is my handle, Miss_Magitek, where I do all of my TTRPG stuff, all of my gaming stuff is all there. Also, twitch.tv/MagiRPG is where I run all my games with my friends. I'm also in the Hansa Discord, though I mostly am a fly on the wall, and I lurk in occasionally. But I really want to be more involved with various communities in 2025. That's like a goal of mine, to just kind of broaden my horizons and talk to people outside of my own little bubble. So hopefully I can participate more.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I know. I've been feeling that way myself. I feel like it's been, 5-6 years since Breakfast in Beauclair was founded, and our little international Hansa came together, and I feel like people have graduated college, gotten new jobs, moved, had kids, gotten married.
Wow.
And I know that a lot of people are feeling like, I need to reach out more, I need to connect more, including myself. So hopefully you'll see me in addition to Tracie and Kitty in the Hansa Discord. And yeah, so thank you guys again for joining us for this episode. And next episode, join us as we conclude our discussion of Andrzej Sapkowski's Baptism of Fire with Chapter 7. Thanks for joining us at The Breakfast Table. For show notes, transcripts of each episode, and a complete list of our social platforms and listening services, head over to breakfastinbeauclair.com. Breakfast in Beauclair is created by Alyssa from Good Morn. It's hosted by Alyssa. The show is edited by Alyssa with music by Alex Berner. Breakfast in Beauclair is produced by Alyssa in New York City with Katie the Redhead of Toussaint, Jacob B., Charlotte from Egberg Glamorai, Original Roach, Libby, John over Leah, Tom from Australia, Jill Kate the Tabby Witch, Ollie from Sweden, James Carson III, Mira Tamaria, Softy, Lisa C., and Red Kite. Special thanks to Kitty and Tracie for joining us for this episode, and our international Hansa for their support.